Now that we know everything there is to know about Battlefield 6 Season 2, and we have proper gameplay of the first map, Contaminated, I think it's the best time to really pull together my overall thoughts on what's happening with the Battlefield franchise, because I think it's just repeating the same mistakes from the past, despite there being overwhelming feedback from players and community members about what they really want to see. So here's the Season 2 roadmap, and in it you can see we're getting 2 new maps, 4 new primary weapons, a new secondary weapon, 2 new gadgets, a melee weapon, and 3 new vehicles. As I've said across my last few videos, this is quite disappointing to me. As someone who's experienced the last 2 attempts at live service for Battlefield games and been very disappointed in those, and experienced what came before, the premium system of DLCs, which I think is the gold standard for this franchise. I myself have given feedback on countless occasions about what Battlefield players actually care about, and to see that feedback along with the words of several of my content creator colleagues and various community members for the Battlefield franchise essentially not be listened to again is just very frustrating, really. So in the hopes that someone out there is listening, here's another attempt at that feedback. I think the single most critical piece of content for Battlefield players is maps. These varied locations, different settings, different biomes, they're essential for keeping gameplay fresh and dynamic, and they ensure a different experience every time you load up the game. Battlefield has so many different elements to its sandbox that having multiple maps that support these in different ways allows everyone to feel like they're part of the action. With Battlefield 6, once again, we're being delivered less content than Battlefield fans expect, and that's particularly important within the context of this game because, as we've been told since the reveal, Battlefield 6 is seen as the successor to the most popular titles in the franchise, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. Both of these titles delivered 4 maps per DLC, offering players plenty of variety every time a new DLC dropped. Battlefield 6 so far has delivered just 2 maps per season, and that kind of falls in line with past live service offerings for Battlefield games. Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042, they also failed to meet player expectations, delivering 2 or sometimes only 1 new map per season, which simply isn't enough. Feedback about this from players has been coming in since the switch was made to live service with Battlefield 5, and now with Battlefield 6 nearly 8 years later, the same mistake is still being made. I find it really baffling, even more so when you consider Battlefield 6 was met with almost universal praise and excitement when it was revealed, that the decision wasn't made to go all in and capitalize on that momentum. Battlefield 6 surpassed the excitement even for Battlefield 1 back in 2016, selling players a true successor to Battlefields 3 and 4, a modern title that focused on delivering the kind of combined arms experience that fans expect. But that momentum that was built up across the open beta and launch has been completely squandered at this point. Season 1's content wasn't plentiful enough and was met with a fairly mixed reaction, offering more of just what the base game already did, and that led to a big drop in player numbers. And now with Season 2, the announcement of less content than players expect once again has been met again with more disappointment and frustration. And with how much importance was seemingly placed on Battlefield 6 by EA when it was revealed, you'd have thought that more care and attention would have been put into what comes after it launches, especially when you consider the market the game is operating in. Call of Duty is a content and live service juggernaut, offering bundles of new content every single season, striving to keep players engaged so they don't stray off to other titles. Battlefield 6 had this opportunity to really step up and show players that it meant business, that it had listened to feedback from past games, that more content was expected. But it hasn't delivered that at all. It stuck to the same path that's led to declining player numbers, a lack of interest, and eventually, support ended prematurely for past titles. Battlefield 4, the last game to really deliver on what players expect for content post-launch, actually extended support beyond the original planned lifetime of the DLC roadmap, and it gave players an additional 4 or 5 multiplayer maps, I think, new weapons, game modes, and continued quality of life updates for more than a year after the final DLC, Final Stand, launched for the game. This not only cemented the game as, essentially, the king of all modern Battlefield titles, but it kept the game healthy and content-rich, extending the lifetime of the game, and it allowed Battlefield to maintain a solid footing whilst the next game was worked on in the background. Whether they didn't listen to feedback about what players actually want from Battlefield games, or if this post-launch support has been designed in this way, I'm not sure. But I think it's very safe to state that the current system is wrong for Battlefield, and it's not keeping players on Battlefield 6. The alarming drop in player numbers is a clear sign that whatever they're doing isn't enough. In order to run a successful live service, games need to not only retain players, but they need to get them to spend money on like battle passes, microtransactions, cosmetics. That's exactly what Battlefield 6 is trying to do. But to convince players to part with their cash, you have to offer them a compelling base product that they want to continue to return to. And confidence in that base product is usually shown in new, tangible content being delivered on a consistent basis, in the form of seasonal updates. Battlefield 6 is trying to do that, but it's not doing a very good job of it. And without more maps, weapons, gadgets, and vehicles, that's your bread and butter Battlefield content, we're going to continue to see a decline in player numbers. So what's actually wrong with the way Battlefield is handling live service then? Well, I think there's several things that you can point to, and pretty much all of them are coming at the expense of what Battlefield fans actually want. EA and Battlefield Studios have decided that the live service should be filled with these limited time events, modes, and grinds, incentivizing players to return to the game to experience them. Here we can see on the Season 2 roadmap several of these limited time events, including a gas-filled version of the new Contaminated map, where you get a gas mask to stop you hallucinating if you enter it, a mode for Gauntlet with essentially the same effect, highlighted as a separate element on the roadmap, and another called Synthesis for the Battle Royale, which I believe is exactly the same thing as the previous two limited time modes that I've already mentioned. A night mode for the second map, where you use NVGs, lasers, and flashlights to see in a darker version of the Hagenthal base map. Then a carbon copy of that for Gauntlet, a limited time operation called Operation Augur, and a new bonus path for the Battle Pass. That's a lot of limited time offerings, which by definition won't be available forever. They make up over 50% of the entire season's worth of content, all designed to get you to come back to the game for fear of missing out, FOMO, that you're going to miss something really cool if you don't log in. It's a mechanism designed to get you to log into the game in hopes that you might part with some of your cash for cosmetic items, which, as I'm sure you can guess, will be themed around those limited time events. Now, personally, I'm not 100% against limited time events. There are several in games that I've played that can be really fun and enjoyable, and I wouldn't be totally against them here in Battlefield 6. That is, if they didn't come at the expense of real, tangible content that I truly care about. Maps, new locations, and new places to fight in. If there was just one LTM that was launched, the season's narrative leaned into, I could see myself enjoying that, and then it goes away when the season finishes, and it's replaced by a new one that fits with the next season's worth of content. That I could actually get behind. But here, I'm looking at a roadmap that's half made up of these modes, and after a couple of weeks, that content won't be available. I've used Photoshop here to remove all the limited time stuff in the roadmap, and well, it doesn't really look great, does it? All these limited time offerings, ironically, have probably taken way more time to ideate, build, polish, and have ready for the season than they will be actually live in the game for people to play. And all of that work will essentially be for nothing, because when the season's over, nobody's going to remember this stuff. And I think the two most egregious examples here are the inclusions of an operation as a limited time mode and the bonus path for the Battle Pass. Both of them irk me for different reasons. First, Operations. Season 2 is going to combine the two new maps, Contaminated and Hagenthal Base, into one larger narrative-driven battle, which is based upon the blueprint of the Operations game mode that fans of Battlefield 1 absolutely loved. It's essentially Breakthrough, but with multiple waves of attacks, and when the attackers complete the first map, they push the defenders back onto the second map, and the battle continues until you run out of reinforcements. Really cool game mode, narrative elements with cutscenes between waves of attacks. It's really, really cool. But here in Battlefield 6, they're playing with our feelings because, well, it's not going to stick around. Once the season is over, Operation Augur is going away. because it's limited time. Once again, all that work, all that effort and polish put in by the developers essentially wasted because no one will be able to experience it anymore. And not only that, you're doing it with something that fans of Battlefield actually want. Operations was wildly successful in Battlefield 1, so much so that DICE took it and added it to Battlefield 5. Let's not talk about how they ruined it in Battlefield 5, but at least they saw the potential and tried to capitalize on it. Here in Battlefield 6, no, that's not allowed. We have to have our fun within this limited period, be happy about it, and then it's gone. That's not going to make people happy. I think it's just going to frustrate people. What if you can't play during that period where the operation is active, but you really love operations from Battlefield 1? Oh, that's just bad luck. You're going to miss it. Instead of adding to the base game and keeping content active permanently, there seems to be this weird obsession with making everything limited time, and it just pisses people off. The game would be more content-rich and entertaining if you just kept things there permanently. And then we've got the bonus path for the Battle Pass. They're actually highlighting a grind mechanic as content yet again. This went down like a lead balloon in Season 1, but it's right back here again for Season 2. An extra path full of shiny, trinket-like cosmetics designed to get you to come back to the game because if you don't unlock them, you've somehow missed out. Half the stuff in the bonus path for Season 1 was actually for the player card, which despite being a cool part of Battlefield 6, and one of the only redeeming qualities that Battlefield 2042 created, it's hardly something to applaud when there's so little else happening with the season. I mean, we've still got this insane weapon unlock grind in Battlefield 6 where you have to spend hours and hours with one weapon getting over 1,000 kills and more to unlock all the attachments. And an element of the season that I'm supposed to be excited about is yet another layer of grind on top of that. Come on, that's just a bit ridiculous. These kinds of limited time events and elements in the season, they don't respect the player's time. And to me at least, they feel like cheap mechanics designed to fill gaps in a live service that they know exist because they haven't done what Battlefield fans actually want. Bringing up the Season 2 roadmap again here, 50% of the content is null and void to me. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't appeal to me. Take away that content, and you've got a seriously understocked season that is somehow supposed to keep players returning for up to 3 months. I don't see how anybody working on Battlefield 6 can look at that meager amount of content and convince themselves that it's enough from a player's perspective. It might be good from a business perspective. You might be saving money by not making as much content, but from a player point of view, you know, the people that you want to keep coming back to your game, I just don't think that's enough. So how can the developers at Battlefield Studios and the leadership at EA fix the problems that we have with Battlefield 6 and its live service? Well, there are a few points I'd like to highlight, but one consistent thread through all of them that I want to say before that is that these things will take time. Very likely we wouldn't see any real fruit from these changes that I'm about to suggest until Season 3 in May at the very earliest. First of all, you've got to listen to your players and you've got to understand what it is that they want from a Battlefield live service. The game has lost all of its momentum, and those huge player numbers that we saw at launch, those are gone, and you're not going to get those player numbers back now. It's too late, and the damage is done. But you can certainly salvage the situation somewhat. It's time to double down, listen to the players still playing the game, and understand what they want, and then produce that. If you do a good job there, word of mouth that the game has improved and has more content will slowly start to spread out from the core player base into the wider gaming community. And perhaps more passive players or lapsed players may come back and give the game another look. There is of course no guarantee of this, but there is precedent for this happening with the franchise before. Battlefield 4 had a really rough start, didn't really listen to players, and left a lot of people feeling like the game was doing something different than what they wanted. Sure, that game had the advantage of premium DLCs launching regardless of these problems. Content was being made for these DLCs before the game even launched, but DICE did take the time to fix the major issues with that game, listen to their players, and ended up with a great Battlefield game. If you don't listen to your players that you've got now, people still playing your game despite the issues you've got and the lack of content, and these are the more hardcore dedicated fans of the franchise anyway, pretty soon those people will stop playing as well, and you'll have no one left playing the game at all. Look at Battlefield 2042 as an example of what happens when you continually don't listen to your fans. Secondly, I think there needs to be a renewed focus on the community that Battlefield used to embrace as a franchise. Adding a proper server browser with official, dedicated, persistent servers should be one of the things on their list. Flagship Battlefield games from the past, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, did as well as they did because not only did they provide great gameplay and maps, but they also allowed their players to control the experience in a meaningful way and let their players discover this with a clear, simple server browser. Metro, 3,000 tickets, no M320. Caspian Border, 24/7 Conquest. Down Van Peak, Rush Infantry only. All of these experiences appeared because the community crafted them and there was clear visibility of them. Reintroducing this sense of community is core to the Battlefield experience, and it will come with additional benefits. You allow players to create their own locations organically within the game, where they can congregate and enjoy the game with like-minded friends or other players, which naturally then extends the lifetime of the product, because these players always know they can log back in, they can find that server, find the experience that they enjoy. Plus, for players in less populated regions, it allows those players to come back on, let's say, specific days or at specific times, knowing that certain servers will be populated and they can experience the game the way it was meant to be played, rather than relying on bots to backfill half-empty servers via matchmaking. Community servers and curated community experiences are already halfway there in the game via Portal anyway. It's just incredibly poorly managed and incredibly poorly laid out, and it seems to have little to no focus whatsoever. So put some time and effort into that, give us a proper server browser with official, persistent servers with proper map rotations in there, and let the community thrive. This would have a way more meaningful impact than a limited time mode or some weird FOMO mechanic that's been thought up in a boardroom. And lastly, I think completely removing the NDA from Battlefield Labs and opening up the floodgates to all players would be a game changer. Not only would it let players see and experience the kind of improvements they can expect to arrive in the main game in the near future, it would also make the people in charge of the game accountable to the feedback that they're getting. There are plenty of posts on Reddit from before launch of issues being highlighted in Battlefield Labs, and those kind of just not being addressed or swept under the carpet. By removing the NDA, the relationship between the team working on the game and the people calling the shots and the community would become a two-way street. Whereas right now, it feels like Labs is a location purely used to test for bugs after content has already been pushed through the phase where meaningful changes could be enacted. Labs, for me, should be just like the Battlefield 4 community test environment, where the community can help the dev team. Let players see Golmud Railway with no textures. Let them see the evolution of the map as it's adapted for Battlefield 6 combat compared to its 2013 layout. Let them see what improvements you're making to vehicles so that they, in almost real time, can see the experience improve in Battlefield 6. You've really got nothing left to lose at this point. The reputation of the product is rock bottom again. The best way that you can build back better is to work with people who are still around, the dedicated ones. Show that you care and let those people be a part of it. That's exactly what Battlefield 4 did with the CTE, and look what happened there. You created one of the best Battlefield games ever made. If the people in charge of Battlefield 6 and the team working on it don't pivot pretty quickly, sentiment is going to continue to tank, just like it did with Battlefield 5 and never even got going with 2042. And the little trust that's left with the brand will be lost once again. Battlefield always seems to start from zero every single time. The last time it didn't was Battlefield 1, which came off the back of extended support for Battlefield 4, full of content that players actually wanted. The situation that Battlefield 6 finds itself in right now needn't have happened, and as somebody who has given feedback on this very scenario for 3 games in a row now, it's really disappointing to see the same mistakes being made again. It doesn't help that decision makers around Battlefield actively chose to really chase a different crowd with this game. They chased Call of Duty players, who expect a different type of gameplay to Battlefield players anyway. We saw smaller maps, shorter time to engagement, this constant frantic action with no natural downtime, and a big focus on other elements, like cosmetics. All of this did lead to an incredibly popular launch, but it has completely failed to keep those people engaged. And now Battlefield players are sitting around looking at a product that wasn't made for them, feeling as though it should have been made for them. Feedback poured in during the open beta about the issues with the direction the game was taking, and that feedback wasn't heeded. The live service has, up until now, continued to push in that same direction. And look, we've got huge drop-offs in player numbers and just a general lack of interest in the product. That should be ringing some alarm bells at EA, because you can bet that in going in this direction, they thought they'd be able to capitalize on all those additional players with extra MTX revenue, more Battle Pass purchases, and retention going through the roof, essentially expecting to become the next Call of Duty. And that hasn't happened at all, and unfortunately the feedback was there from the very beginning. This drop-off in players, revenue, and overall time played is probably going to be seen as a failure, and that worries me for the future of the franchise. This laser focus on the competition that's out there, almost trying to be the competition, has left Battlefield losing its own identity. I don't think people want another Call of Duty. They want a Battlefield game that's fun, engaging, and brings us the Battlefield gameplay in a modern setting. They want a competitor to Call of Duty, something different. Without those same old figureheads at the top of the franchise, people who built Battlefield over the last 2 decades and know what Battlefield fans actually want, it feels like the product has completely lost its way. Hopefully this drastic collapse in interest and player numbers is enough to make the people who are in charge sit up, pay attention, and start steering Battlefield back in the right direction again. Right, that's all I want to say about this. As somebody who was really looking forward to Battlefield 6 last year, I can't say I'm particularly enthralled by Season 2, the content, or what it means for the future of the game. The fact the content doesn't appear to be increasing is an issue for me. It gives me less reason to fire up the game as my first choice. I really do hope the people in charge are aware of the issues the game is facing and will start to push for the game to return to a more classic Battlefield experience. More maps, bigger maps, more vehicle interplay, combined arms, less of a focus on that short-term gratification and chasing MTX revenue. Feedback on this has been happening continuously over the past decade on what Battlefield fans want, and I'm someone who's been part of that, so seeing the feedback almost constantly be ignored is really frustrating. I love this franchise, I want it to succeed, and that's why I'll keep trying to help it in any way that I can. I sound negative saying the same thing over and over again, but it's because I care, I want things to get better, and it's coming from a good place. Thanks for watching, drop a like to support the channel, and if you like the video, subscribe for more BF6 content, and I'll catch you soon.